All right, this video is going to go over the how-to paragraph, which is in Chapter 3 of First Steps of Academic Writing. If you want to have your book open to take notes or just to follow along, I'm going to basically be going through the information that begins on page 67. All right, so let me go ahead and begin with this. All right, so the first thing that we want to talk about, this is also on page 67, is we want to talk about the keys to writing how-to paragraphs. Now, when we're writing how-to paragraphs, what our goal is to give instructions on how to do something, or explain the steps necessary for doing something, to do something or to make something. So the first thing that we have to do is that we have to begin with a topic sentence. Now the topic sentence has to do two things. The first thing that it has to do is name the topic. So in this case, the topic is going to be whatever it is that we're trying to explain. And then we need to state that the paragraph will give instructions. So here's an example of what I mean, and we'll go over some of these in class, but here it's easy to write a paragraph if you follow the 4 steps in the writing process. Okay, so in this one, the topic is writing a paragraph, and it shows that I'm going to give instructions because it says if you follow the 4 steps in the writing process. Okay. On page 69 of the book, there's 3 more model topic sentences that we'll be using to write our paragraphs. Okay, so then our next step is that we have to divide the instructions into steps. So the important part of this paragraph is not just that we list a bunch of steps, but we need to divide it up into a series of different steps. Most of your paragraphs will have between 4 and 6 steps to them, and you'll explain each one. But you want to make it clear to the reader what each step is. Here I said 5 to 7 steps in your paragraph. I'd say 4 to 6 is also fine as well. In this case, you can use the command form of the verbs, and we'll discuss that more in class. But here's an example. First, use a pre-writing technique to come up with ideas for your paragraph. This would be the first step in the process. You'll notice that I introduce this step with a transition word, in this case first, because this is the beginning of the paragraph. Okay, so moving on to the next step. The next thing that we have to do is we need to explain each of our steps one by one. So it's not enough to just say first do this, next do this, after that do this. For each one of the steps we want to explain it. So our first step said the first step is to use a pre-writing technique. So the explanation of this is here. This is a good way to generate a lot of ideas and to help yourself get over the problem of staring at an empty page and not having any ideas. You can use listing, where you list all the steps, or clustering, where you organize all the steps in bubbles to help you come up with several ideas. Once you have a good set of ideas, organize them and decide which ones you want to use in your paragraph. Okay, so all of this is just explanation of that first step where I say use a pre-writing technique. The thing that I mentioned earlier is that we want to make sure that we're using a transition signal for each new step. So at the beginning of each new step, we want to have a transition signal. Okay. So those are the four keys on how to write a paragraph. So here's an example of the last one. So after that, begin to write your paragraph. Follow the ideas that you've generated in your pre-writing, and try not to worry about too much about spelling, grammar, or mechanics, because you can fix those in the next step. Okay. So this is not part of the 4 first steps, but the last thing that we need to do once we've written the paragraph is that we need to end it with an appropriate concluding sentence. So your concluding sentence can either restate the topic again, or it can be the last step of your instructions. The important thing here is that we do not want to summarize all the steps. Again, you're going to have somewhere between 4 and 7 steps. So you don't want to say in your concluding sentence every single step again. You can either just restate the topic again, or you can make the last sentence be the last step in your instructions. So here's some examples. If you follow these 4 steps, you'll create a beautiful paragraph. This is a restatement of the topic sentence. Or we could have this one, which would be the final step. As a final step, submit your paragraph to your teacher for a grade. So that's the last step in the process. All right, so here's a look at the whole paragraph as a whole once we've completed it. So again, remember we want to make sure that we're beginning, that our very first sentence is the topic sentence, and that our very last sentence is the concluding sentence. And we want to limit our paragraph to about 13 to 15 sentences. Okay, so if you want to, just for time's sake, I'm going to move on, but if you want to pause the video and read through this one, you can. One of the things I do want you to do for homework is to read the paragraph on page 67 and 68, which is how to have a successful garage sale. And then there's a number of questions that I asked you to answer about that paragraph, not this one, for homework. Okay? All right, so then moving on to the last thing that we need to talk about for the questions that you'll be answering for homework, we want to talk about complex sentences. Now, so far, we've talked about simple sentences and we've talked about compound sentences. Now we're going to add to that complex sentences. Now, the whole reason that we're going over all of these different sentence types is that we want to get in the habit of using a variety of different sentences in our writing. This will make our writing look better and sound more professional. If we only use the same kind of sentence over and over and over again, the writing can be repetitive and a little bit boring. So just as a review, we have here simple sentences, which was the first one we studied. And then the important thing there is that we have one subject-verb pair. And by that we mean that the subject or subjects in the sentence do all of the verbs. So in this case, the subjects are John and I, and the verb is went. But both John went and also I went. So all of the subjects do all of the verbs. The other one we talked about is a compound sentence. And a compound sentence is basically 2 simple sentences connected with the fanboys. And we remember that the fanboys are for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. But we also have to have a comma there as well. Okay, so for a compound sentence, we really need 3 things. We need the 2 simple sentences, we need the fanboys, and we need the comma. So if we look at our example, we have John and I went to church, for we love it. The 2 simple sentences are in black. John and I went to church, we love it. Okay, and then the fanboys is for, and then we have the comma there before the fanboys. Okay, we don't put it after the fanboys. All right, so then here's our last type of sentence, which is called a complex sentence. And like its name says, this one can be a little bit confusing to learn. But we'll do practice in class, and you'll have the opportunity to go over this several times before you have to use it. Now, the complex sentence has 2 parts. One part is called an independent clause. Now this is just a new word, but really what an independent clause is it's the same as a simple sentence, right? It's exactly the same as a simple sentence. But it also has a dependent clause, and this can be a little bit confusing. But what a dependent clause is it's a sentence that begins with an adverb subordinator, okay? I know that that's a big and confusing word, and unfortunately we need to use these words because they're the only words that are out there for them. But basically, an adverb subordinator answers the question or tells the reader that you're going to answer the question of when, why, or where, or how, those sort of things. So unlike fanboys, where there's just 7 of them, there's there's a number of different adverb subordinators. If you turn to page 78, there's, I think, what is this? I think there's 7 or 8 adverb subordinators that you'll be using in your writing. But another one is because. Because is also an adverb subordinator. So if we look at the complex sentence, basically it has 2 parts, or we could say it has 3 parts, depending on how we want to look at it. It has the independent clause, again, which is the same as a simple sentence, and it also has the dependent clause, which begins with the adverb subordinator. So we could say it has an adverb subordinator, a dependent clause, and an independent clause. But let's take a look at the examples. So John and I went to church. That's an independent clause, right? And then we have because we love it. And that's the dependent clause that begins with an adverb subordinator. In this case, is because. Now, unlike a compound sentence where the fanboys can only go in the middle of the sentence, the adverb subordinator can go in the middle of the sentence, or it can come at the beginning of the sentence. However, there is a difference in the way that we write these. So in the first one, John and I went to church because we love it. You'll notice that there is no comma before because. However, when we put the adverb subordinator at the beginning of the sentence, because we love going to church, John and I went, you'll notice that we do put a comma after the dependent clause. So this is a difference between these 2 ways of writing it. Okay? So, so again, the important thing, the question asks you, what is a complex sentence? Well, a complex sentence has 2 parts. It has the independent clause and it has the dependent clause. The independent clause is the same as a simple sentence. The dependent clause, it begins with an adverb subordinator. And on page 78, there's a list of different time adverb subordinators that we use. Okay? So go ahead and write those answers down, bring them into class, and we'll do practice on all of this in class. Take care. See you then. Bye.